So, sir, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is learning about the Cryptologic and Cyber Systems Division down in San Antonio. And so we're here with Chief Jones. Chief, if you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your career background.
Yeah, absolutely. Chief Rob Jones, been in for 24 years. Been stationed USAFE, PACAF, to name specifics, Osan, Aviano, Germany. Most of my time was spent in the NCR, National Capital Region, 2 special duties with the Air Force Honor Guard. My primary career field came in as a telephone maintainer. In 2008, 2009, I believe we merged into one career field under small computers and such and networks, I believe, and been going ever since. So I do want to say I appreciate the opportunity on behalf of HNC to kind of give that the enlisted perspective, and look forward to your questions.
Okay. So you're the senior enlisted leader for the organization. Tell us a little bit about the team. How many airmen are you? Are there? Where are you guys located? Are you all in the same place, or are you distributed out at other other locations as well?
Yeah, so all good questions. I was a bit overwhelmed by the response when I first got there and asked those same questions. So we are stationed out of Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland, primarily on Security Hill. We do have several other facilities downtown, Port San Antonio, which is the old Kelly Air Force Base. Okay. Primarily, however, the majority of the unit is on Security Hill. As far as the number of airmen, we have about 1,600. That includes military officers and civilian alike. However, about 170 enlisted members we have. So that's just about 10% of the unit consists of the enlisted.
Okay, and what's the mission for the division?
So CCSD is a Crypto and Cyber Systems Division within LCMC, or under LCMC. There is our mission set varies widely. We deal with the crypto systems like you mentioned, as far as fabricating, maintaining, and updating those assets. For the cyber side of things, we definitely impact OCO, which is offensive cyber operations. We do some DCO missions as well. Also under our PS group, which is our product support group, we have mostly the logistics-based airmen. So we're talking about the 2S supply folks, as well as some transportation professionals as well, to store, inventory, and transport the classified and unclassified equipment and items that we have. So again, very, very varied. It's even a surprise that we're under the same umbrella, but given our location, it's a opportunity for us to get to know each other and get to know what the other missions do, and kind of synergize and blend that into one team.
So working conditions are a big conversation nowadays. So what are the kind of typical working conditions for your team? Do you guys do you have a large telework component? Or most of your people working in secure areas, or is there like a blend of both?
Yes, as much as we can, we like to take advantage of the telework capabilities and opportunities that we have. I know that's very important to General Jenna Tempo, our PEO under HN. However, we do primarily work inside of a SCIF. So we definitely have some limitations as far as that's concerned. There are some opportunities depending on the branch and honestly the timing sometimes, or the career field, whether we can afford those opportunities across the board to have folks telework. I will pause really quickly though to give a big shout out to the HNCL division, which is our logistics folks, as I was just explaining. So they primarily work outside of inside of a warehouse. And when I first got to San Antonio, my assistant told me there's two types of weather in San Antonio. There's hot and hotter. So it amazes me, especially during the summer months. We ask our airmen to inventory, stock shelves, unload trucks, load trucks in these conditions, and they do it every single day without complaint. The mission does not skip a beat with doing that. So those folks for sure don't always have the opportunity to telework too. A lot of hands-on, not only on the equipment, but the items that we get in on a daily basis. So huge shout out to all my folks, especially in the warehouse.
So do you find it challenging for yourself and maybe for your young supervisors, you know, when they've got some organizations that have the opportunity to do that, some organizations that don't, you know, how do you keep everybody still engaged and focused on the mission, making sure that things are getting done?
Yeah, great question. So working remotely does offer some limited capability and opportunities to kind of touch base. I, for one, am very face-to-face. I will say though that is definitely a challenge though to make sure making sure that everybody's on the same page. One of the ways we combat against that is when we do have the opportunity to come together. We just did or this past summer, we did an all call under Colonel Krebs, who is our SML for CCSD. We encourage folks to always take advantage of that and participate in those so that they can get on the same page. They can get that the connection piece. And by the way, later this month, we are having a wing level event. We call it Olympiad. Essentially, it's our sports day.
Okay.
And do you know who's heading that up? It's a senior airman. So Senior Airman Stubblefield, huge shout out to you too. Senior Airman Stubblefield is heading that up. And again, this is wing level. So it's easy for me to say, but when you think about that for a little bit, this is a senior airman that's running a wing event and herding all the cats and dogs together to get some morale boosted within our unit and that sort of thing. It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, so it's that's one of the things we need to do, and we need to make sure it happens despite telework conditions or despite pandemics and whatnot. When we do come together, we definitely need to take advantage of that, and that's something we harp on our folks. Participate in those wing level events. Participate in the sensing sessions that we do, and the AFMC Connect events as well.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of advice do you give to young NCOs, maybe first-time supervisors that are struggling a little bit to try and stay connected or to build and establish a relationship with their people?
Yeah, great question. So not to sound too crass, but I would say the first thing is to give a crap. It's important that you care for your airman that's under your charge and your subordinates. Without that, everything else, in my opinion, can be very futile. That needs to come first. You need to care about your folks. And I know that may sound very cushy and maybe pampering, but there's ways to care about that. And sometimes that may mean foot to butt, so to speak, if you track what I'm saying.
Yep.
And honestly, I had great leaders in my past. And really, at the end of the day, you may not like it at first, but those are the ones you come to respect and really rely on for advice. So definitely lead with caring for airmen. I would say the second thing is kind of a 3-in-1: communicate, communicate, communicate. I try to preach this all the time. There is no such thing as over communication. Staying engaged with your airmen, and then your airmen staying engaged with you. That is vitally, vitally important, especially in this day and age of text messaging. Even through Teams, you may not be able to pick up on certain body languages and different things like that. It's important that we stay connected and communicate as frequently, as often as we can. As a matter of fact, I'm just dealing with a situation to where there was a miscommunication. Nobody really to blame for it, but it's just a miscommunication. And had we been engaged a little bit more and maybe communicated a little bit more, that could have been a non-issue. So definitely want to communicate to your airmen, and that goes up and down the chain. I would say, secondly, perspective. So it's one thing to be on the sidelines or maybe play Monday morning quarterback, or to have the good idea fairy kind of pop into your brain and say, hey, well, why don't we do this? And it's another thing to be the leader, to say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then know the secondary and tertiary effects of that. So perspective is really important. I ask my airmen to trust their leaders, because they typically can see a bigger scope that's out there, rather than the sort of straw that we sometimes look through in our own little silo. So perspective is a huge thing I ask my airmen to look for. So yeah, care for airmen, communicate, and definitely get some wide scope perspective as much as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned caring for airmen, and I think that's such a great point, because that's one thing that you can't fake, and the Air Force recently has made a lot of improvements, and it's really leadership listening to the force, kind of trying to make some changes, and most notably the change in female hair standards, and better attention and focus on fitment and uniforms and gear. The effort right now to try and fix the evaluation system that everybody kind of acknowledges is not functioning properly. So what do you say to airmen that are in the organization, but they get frustrated because they feel like change doesn't come along fast enough?
Yeah, great question. I put myself in their shoes. When I was an airman, it was hey, well, why don't we implement this tomorrow or right now? And it's very, very easy to think that way. So again, I kind of revert back to my previous comment. There is kind of trusted leadership. They can kind of see some things out onto the horizon that at the lower levels you may not be able to see. Also, again, so this is another way for perspective as well. So change happening fast enough, if you were, if you came in when I came in, it was understood, hey, any change you make will probably take 4 or 5 years to finally implement. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, when Chief Master Sgt of the Air Force Wright came in, he was making changes on with a month. It seemed like a monthly, 2-month turnaround time. So I would say again, for that perspective, it may not happen overnight, but as far as I'm concerned, some of the changes are happening lightning fast, especially compared to how it used to be, 15, 20 years ago or so. So again, it is a different perspective, but just the bottom line to that question though is trust your leaders to know that they understand that making change is important. We want to get it right. Under the chief, so General Brown, he definitely wants us to accelerate change. Mm-hmm. And we as leaders, we recognize that. We also want to balance that with trying to get it as best we can before we implement that change. So it may not happen overnight. I just ask the airmen and leaders alike to understand that leaders are definitely trying to get it right.
Yeah. So I talked to what your advice for a young supervisor would be. What about a brand new airman straight out of tech school coming in, their first organization? What do you tell them on how they should get started? I mean, what should be their priority on day number one of their job?
Yeah, great question. So this is something I've implemented. I wish I can say it was all my idea, but it's something that I learned way back long ago. I meet with every single enlisted person that comes into the unit, and we do occasionally get some straight from tech school, which means they're brand spanking new and have no clue how the Air Force operates and different things like that. And that's okay. Actually, that's I take pride in that, because now we can build airmen up right where they are and turn them into NCOs and hopefully senior NCOs in the future. But one of the things I tell them kind of right off the bat, and I say it in a joking manner, but it's honestly serious. I say, hey, if you are not annoying your supervisor with questions, you're doing something wrong. Because the only way to learn is to really ask questions and make mistakes. We want to mitigate those mistakes. So ask questions as much as you can first. I explained to the airmen that they're like a sponge and they need to absorb everything they possibly can. I will say it is difficult in a unit, any unit, I think under LCMC, just because it's very atypical. It's not a typical organizational structure. It's not a typical squadron. It can be difficult to kind of navigate through, but I think there's benefits in those challenges as well. So because we're kind of unique, we get some unique experiences too. So I always have them lean on the civilians I mentioned earlier. We have a huge civilian population, which means they've probably been around a long time. And with that comes a great deal of experience, a great deal of knowledge that they can absorb from. And gratefully, we've had some great civilians that have been feeding our enlisted corps with that information and with that experience.
So Chief, that pretty much brings us to the end of our time. But before we close, I just want to see, is there anything that I forgot to ask about or anything that you'd like to reiterate?
I will say I want to give some thank yous. Thank you to you, sir, for this opportunity, and also to Chief Newman, who hopefully will be watching this. You know, thanks for that opportunity and recognizing that our enlisted corps does need to hear messages like this and to know that they're not only considered but highly valued. I also want to thank again Colonel Krebs, who is a phenomenal leader. He gives me a lot of autonomy to address the enlisted matters as I see fit. And I know that comes with a lot of trust. And I will ask if there's any other civilian leaders or SMLs that, or officers in this case, that have NCOs under their charge, that they trust their corps to take care of the mission, that they trust their leaders or their senior enlisted leader to handle those issues in order for them to grow and develop. And again, a huge shout out to the enlisted corps under HNC. Whether you're inventorying items or we do have, unfortunately, some mundane jobs that unfortunately kind of keep us chained to our desks. But whatever you're doing, whether you're a 9S, 100 Airmen in tech apps or in the CSS, taking care of our admin mission, wherever you sit, you are vitally, vitally important. I cannot stress enough, although they may seem, the tasks may seem mundane or unimportant, I will tell you that they absolutely are. A lot of little things can quickly add up to a big thing if it's missed. So definitely appreciate the hard work that the team is bringing every single day.
All right. So Chief, thanks again for joining us on Leadership Log. We really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you much, sir.